Hi everyone, McGee here with week 4 of my matches in the Clodsire Premier League. As a quick recap, I am currently 3-0, positive 12, having a really strong start to the season. I've been able to bring both rain and non-rain teams. Most of my Pokemon have shown up at least in one battle. And I've been able to execute my win conditions pretty well so far. So I'm hoping to continue that going into week 4 in this match against SageSpike, who has a really interesting team. Certainly puts me in an interesting predicament in a couple of spots this week, and so we'll kind of talk through that and what I'm seeing here as we go through the team overview. So first up, he's got a Tapu Koko, which is an interesting mon going into this matchup for me. It doesn't pop off too aggressively by itself. It doesn't have an easy time pushing through Archaludon. It doesn't want to be clicking U-turn Revolt switches into an Archaludon switch because that will enable stamina boosts. Regieleki can benefit from the terrain it sets if it's not careful, and it forces him to bring other pieces in order not to let the Regieleki pop off. Mega Meganium has some pretty good tank ability against it, but obviously it being an electric type can be pretty good pressure against some of my rain elements. Pelipper's getting obliterated by it. Palafin isn't going to break through it with one jet punch, and it's going to be really easily KO'd by the electric attacks back. Moltres certainly isn't enjoying it. Brave Bird could come out to threaten Meganium. Wild Charge could come out to threaten the Nihilego. So it can exert a lot of pressure in this matchup, but it can also enable me in a couple of ways too. So it's an interesting piece that he has to navigate a little carefully. He's got a Gliscor as well, which is also a difficult one for me to deal with. It does a really good job as a special defensive piece of shutting down pretty well Archaludon. Obviously, it invalidates the existence of Regieleki altogether. A special defensive version can withstand the Nihilego pressure, especially unboosted Nihilego, so that it can threaten back pretty easily with an Earthquake. And then it can also be pretty effective against the Dugtrio and the Moltres. So even though it gets obliterated by the rain element of the Jet Punch from my Palafin or Solar Beam Spam from Mega Meganium, it can still withstand a lot of my offensive presence, and so I need to be really careful of that going in. Alomomola is obviously a really great answer to choice locked Palafin, who will never break through that. So it really invalidates a lot of what Palafin wants to do or has done in previous weeks, and so it puts a new wrinkle in my prep. But I don't even expect to see a Rocky Helmet Alomomola, to be honest, in this matchup. I fully anticipate it to show up in this match given its ability to withstand Palafin, but I am expecting to see an AV set most likely in this matchup because it can withstand solar beams that way. It can withstand electro shots that way. It can withstand Nihilego pretty well that way. It can tank to a degree some of the attacks from Regieleki and then obviously KO me back really easily with Meercoat. So I'm fully expecting to see AV, fully expecting him to use it in a way to punish me for clicking and trying to spam some of my special attacks. So I need to navigate that pretty carefully. Skuntank, really not putting a lot of consideration towards this week. It does so much to enable Archaludon. It doesn't really exert a lot of pressure on its own. Its speed tier isn't very helpful here. So I have no expectation of seeing Skuntank, but he has it. Latios is a concern of mine. It can withstand some of the Jet Punch spam pretty well. It has Luster Purge spam to really break through my defenses quickly. Can always go Psyshock to threaten Nihiligos, things like that. So Nihiligo can't even wall it in any capacity fast enough to be in front of most of my team. And so I need to find good solutions to this. And sometimes that just means staying on offense. But I'm also wary of some setup potentially could have as well. Sinistra, also another solid Palafin answer as long as it's slotting like a berry, or it can slot a helmet and just try strength sapping its health back. It can be a decent answer to Regieleki. Its heat proof ability makes sure it has no weaknesses to the Mega Meganium, so it can be pretty tanky, especially after a Calm Mind against Mega Meganium and threaten to wall that out. And then also a good answer to Dugtrio and Slitherwing if it wants to be. So a nuisance mon that I expect to see in this matchup. The Terrakion is another good answer to a lot of my team. It has access to Poison Jab, so it can threaten Mega Meganium. It has close combat spam, so Archaludon can't really withstand that. Rock moves, obviously, for the Pelipper. and Moltres, and just generally good coverage, really good Scarfer if it wants to be, faster naturally than everything except for my Regieleki, I believe, and Dugtrio. So we need to be careful of that. Maybe could force him to Shukaberry so that he's not KO'd by the Dugtrio, but overall it really pressures me hard because I don't have good defensive switch-ins to it. Melmetal, I think, is a pretty effective mon in this matchup. I'm benefited from the fact of having both Moltres and Archaladon in my team, which really, I think, limits its item play. It really is reliant on having the punching gloves or at least the protective pads so that it's not getting obliterated by the potential flame body activations on the Moltres. It can't just spam moves willy-nilly, especially double Iron Bash, because even with that protection, it can set off stamina procs for the Archaladon. So it has a really good matchup. It has access to all the right moves, especially Thunder Punch and double Iron Bash, to be really effective here. But he needs to clear out a couple of things before Melmetal is actually threatening me with major damage, or get predicts right. Either way, Melmetal isn't just an easy click button. He does need to play that carefully if he brings it. Volcarona, I'm not really expecting to see, especially with Palafin being functional entirely outside of Rain and having Jet Punch access. Makes it really difficult for Volcarona to find an opportunity to take off unless it's going to run like a Pasho Berry? The Water Berry, to enable a safe tank of one of the Palafin hits. After a boost, maybe it can take off that way, but outside of that, it just is so easily revenge killed or killed by Palafin that it really has a hard time setting up and being effective. And even if it's trying to set up, it still has to be able to break through Nihilego, has to be able to break through Archaladon, has to be able to break through Slitherwing, which are not all easy to do for it. So it has a tough matchup. Exploud is actually pretty annoying here. If I don't have or don't lean on specially defensive Nihilego, the boom bursts from it can be really frustrating to switch into. In fact, I don't really have a good switch in at all. So a Scarf set could just start to force sacks if it shows up, but I'm not really putting a lot of concern towards it this week. I think he's got better answers overall, that he doesn't need to lean on the gimmicky nature of Exploud, but it's there and it certainly could be dangerous. So some overall notes here. My Rain is effective, but obviously a Lomomola is preventing me from doing anything catastrophic in Rain. I do have to address that first, especially in AV version, because nothing is going to KO that simply. And so I need to navigate around that a little bit. He's got some pretty solid setup sets. I could see some sort of agility weakness policy Latios that can tank a Dazzling Gleam, tank an Ice Punch or a Throat Chop from Palafin, tank Sucker Punch from Dugtrio, something like that, or come in at a well-timed U-turn from a Pelipper or a Moltres and just get those easy weakness policy procs. So I need to be really careful of what the Latios is doing until I've scouted that out. The Sinistcha with a couple of Calm Minds turns into a real problem where it can strength stat me really well for my offensive pieces, and most of my specially offensive ones don't take off for damage right away. They either need KOs or they need to set up on their own, but they set up slower than a Calm Mind Sinistcha does, so they can outpace me for setup quicker than I can deal with it if I'm not careful. So I need to be really wary of those setup sets, and then, like I said, to a lesser degree, there's certainly potential for Volcarona to set up. I just don't see it as being highly likely. And then Gliscor, despite my ability to pressure with Rain and some of the water attacks here, Gliscor is a problem. Like I said, it can withstand Regieleki entirely, can manage fine against Nihilego and Archaladon pretty well. Moltres to a degree as well. My Slitherwing has no way through it. My Dugtrio has no way through it. So it's actually a real nuisance to get off the field, even though I think overall it doesn't have a phenomenal matchup for damage output. It can be a real pain defensively to address. So I got to be ready to deal with that. And so going into my matchup this week, like I said, I like Rain. I'm going to lean onto Pelipper this week, but I'm going to change up the Pelipper prep here. Mostly because Pelipper isn't really withstanding anything defensively. A Melmetal clicking Thunder Punch is going to end Pelipper. A Terrakion clicking Stone Edge is going to end Pelipper. It doesn't really do anything notable against Gliscor defensively, that it doesn't need to be able to heal against Gliscor. Gliscor is probably clicking Earthquake or U-turn most times, and so it can come in on those pretty freely. And so I'm not trying to lean on it to be a defensive answer to a Pokemon that really isn't threatening offense against me. And so rather than trying to use Pelipper in that way, I'm actually going to lean on its offensive potential. It's not the most aggressive offensive Pokemon, but it does have some solid ability to slot in for that role occasionally. So I'm running a Choice Scarf this week. 64 HP, 4 defense, 252 special attack, 188 speed with the timid nature, which lets me outspeed Latios after the Scarf is on it and still leave me with a little bit of bulk, which is nice. Surf, Hurricane, Ice Beam, general coverage moves. I think it's pretty obvious how those are being intended. And then U-turn for mobility. And then really it's enabling some weather support here, but I'm not leaning on it too hard, which will, I think, reflect in the rest of my Pokemon in this matchup. I have some rain potential, some rain damage. It makes him have to be willing to address the rain while it's out, but I'm not going to be as aggressively rain oriented as I might have been with other team builds. I just want to have the presence of Pelipper and the presence of the rain, and then that useful speed with the Scarf to be able to address things, especially late game. It can be a really good Hurricane spammer if, Terrakions halfway dead, Latios is mostly gone, Sinistra. I can start clicking those Hurricanes pretty effectively late game if I'm able to enable that. So I like Pelipper here offensively, and as still a range setter, but I'm not liking its defensive presence, so I'll have to backfill that elsewhere, and we'll talk about that. Next up is the Palafin, who is running an Adamant Nature, 240 HP, 252 attack, 12 speed. 12 speed really is just to creep past something funky, like maybe a really speedy Sinistra that's just trying to speed creep uninvested, or a Gliscor that's just trying to creep past, although I don't think Gliscor really matters. So I think really I'm just talking about the Sinistra here for the unexpected speed creep. I'm running Jet Punch, Throat Chop, Substitute Bulk Up. So I'm going for one of those subsets. Like I said, I'm very, very convinced here I'm dealing with an AV Mola. Even if it's not an AV Mola, Mola is definitely coming in a capacity. So I can't just be flip turning around with the Mola. It's not going to be effective. And if it's Rocky Helmet, I'm going to be eating that chip really, really quickly. And so I need to lean on a setup set as a way to blow past that, but also as a way to blow up his entire team. So Jet Punch is really effective against virtually everything except for the Sinistra and the Alomomola, and so that's where the Throat Chop comes in for the good damage, and the Latios as well. And then really just trying to get in front of the Alomomola to click sub, try to get in front of Terrakion to click sub, to a degree Melmetal and click sub, because none of those things really want to stay in until they've scouted out what the Palafin is doing. So I'm trying to take advantage of those force switch out opportunities to get some free setup going on, because with one or two bulk ups, I really do threaten to steamroll the entire team. So if I can get a couple of things out of play, then this is enabled to really close it out, and I'm really excited about that potential here, because I've leaned on Scarf or Band in every week so far, so this is the first time I've not been locked into an attack as soon as I click it, which I think will be nice for just showing the variety of Palafin and kind of leading into different strategies. So next up is the Archaludon, who is running 152 HP, 252 special attack, 104 speed with the modest nature. The speed is to creep past uninvested or low invested Gliscor. And then obviously, maybe to a degree, the Sinistra as well, if in case it's running extra speedy. But this should give me enough speed to be in front of those things if they're not overly invested. I'm leaning into similar strategies as before with a substitute set, Electroshot, Flash Cannon, and Dark Pulse for the damage. The substitute is really effective here because it lets me take advantage of the Lomomola, who I'm confident will be there. It lets me sub in front of Sinistra, who doesn't want to stay in on that. To a degree, it lets me sub in front of the Melmetal because it could fear fighting type attacks if it doesn't have a fighting berry. Forgetting the berry name, not Shuka. But if it's having to worry about the fighting berry, then Chople, there it is. If I'm worried about the Chople berry, I can scout for that to see what it's wanting to do. But this gives me a little more versatility with the Archaludon, because this way I don't have to predict the switch in. I can sub and see what comes out. Electroshot in case rain is out to get advantage of the boosting nature, because again, I expect Gliscor to be specially defensive, and without boosts, I don't know that Archaludon can break through that. So Flash Cannon is my general safe damage, and the Dark Pulse lets me hit the Sinistra and the Latios for super effective damage, as well as give me a neutral attack against the Melmetal. I wasn't really able to slot a move for that, and without having to sacrifice either substitute or my boosting, and if I can't boost, I don't think I can break, so I need to be able to threaten the boost. And really, he's just trying to come in for those safe sub opportunities and break a couple of things. Like I said, I'm expecting to see AV Mola, so being able to damage the Mola without being immediately KO'd back because I'm safe behind a substitute is really, really valuable here, I feel. Next up is the Meganium, running a Modest Nature, 112 HP, 252 special attack, 144 speed. Also running enough speed to creep past Gliscor, who could threaten a poison move. I don't think he's likely to carry one for this matchup just for the Mega Meganium, but he could. So this gives me in front of it at least in case I need to get those high-powered solar beams. Weather Ball for some good general damage against everything else. Synthesis for recovery, of course. And then Toxic here is aimed at two things. One is, again, hitting the Alomomola, who I think could be AV, and just making sure I'm putting it on a timer and limiting my chance to get one-hit KO'd back. But it's also really helpful for the Sinistra and the Volcarona, so that neither set is able to set up in front of the Mega Meganium, because Mega Meganium won't have an easy time breaking those sets if they start clicking Calm Mind or Quiver Dance, and so I can't lean on Weather Ball neutral damage to break through that, and I couldn't lean on Earth Power to break through that, so I wanted to go for Toxic to be able to at least timer those Pokemon and limit their ability to set up and sweep against me. And like I said, my concern here is that he's got some strong AV or strong specially defensive Mons coming in. I need to be able to not get myself in a bad situation against a couple of those. But Mega Meganium does a pretty good job here of limiting some of the potency of the Terrakion, especially if it's choice locked, limiting the setup sets because it can put those on toxic stalls, and then obviously being a pretty good switch into Coco overall, who is likely to carry Dazzling Gleam if it shows up, and maybe Brave Bird, but it doesn't have the ability to spam attacks, thankfully, because the Archaludon can get the stamina procs. He needs to be really careful about enabling Archaludon to take off, so I think that's all very helpful for me. Next up is the Regieleki, who is going to run a Lonely Nature here, 252 Adamant Nature, so 252 attack, not Adamant Nature, 252 attack. It's a Lonely Nature, so it's attack boosting, but I think it's specially defense weakening. 28 special attack, and then 228 speed. The 228 speed is letting me skirt past, I believe, +1 Volcarona. I am accepting that I cannot outspeed Scarf Latios or Scarf Terrakion. I feel confident I have enough answers to those if those do show up, that I'm not in a particularly awful spot, but I didn't see the point in trying to sacrifice damage output to outspeed Scarf Pokemon that I think I could address other ways. He is not running an item that is intentional, so that I can optimize the acrobatics damage, which is really good if I have to deal with the Sinistra, so I can get some really strong acrobatics damage on that. Or if I need to close out a pretty weakened Gliscor, I can do that as well. Or same with the Latios, I have ways to hit those for decent chunks here with the 110 base power acrobatics on an Adamant 252 nature, or sorry, not Adamant, attack boosting 252 attack stat, so that I can get some of the damage output I need here to be effective, but still having Volt Switch for momentum, having Rising Voltage in case he brings the Coco to make sure I have really strong special attack output, even though I'm not heavily invested on that front. But really just trying to lean on the Supercell Slam damage here to pressure a lot of things. If I have addressed the Gliscor, then it comes in and it's really effective in that way. Like I said, AV Mola is a concern, so being able to Supercell Slam that will prevent it from being able to destroy me back with a Mirror Coat. So I'm leaning into that strategy here to prevent Mirror Coat from just being destructive against me. And so the final Pokemon for my team and his first ever appearance on the team is the Claydol, who is running a Bold Nature, 248 HP, 240 defense, 20 special defense, with Earth Power, Ice Beam, Rapid Spin, Teleport. So he's got pretty good coverage here. His main role is to be able to withstand the Terrakion, who I see as being really dangerous and not likely to be Scarfed, so that he's able to pressure really, really aggressively. And so I know Terrakion has access to Mega Horn, but it's unlikely he's going to click Mega Horn unless the Claydol's on the field. So I'm going to try to take advantage of that and pressure here with the Claydol. And then obviously I got the Rapid Spin to address hazard play in case the Gliscor or the Terrakion puts some of those out early game. I can at least spin those away. And then being able to momentum with the Teleport is really good here because it can bait in things like Alomomola or Gliscor, and I have really good switch-ins to those. So I want to take advantage of that. But really, Claydol fits well here for the needs of the matchup. I don't have otherwise a really strong answer to rock spam or the rock fighting spam. Terrakion can pressure really aggressively on the Archaludon. I can't really switch into that. Obviously, my flying types are not dealing with the Stone Edges really well, and so this is really the only safe switch into that. But if I do encounter a choice locked Latios, this also provides some pretty good value to be able to at least absorb those attacks and then pivot out into something offensive to pressure out the Latios. So I'm leaning on him as a bit of a defensive backbone here just to help enable some of the other offensive pieces to be able to at least run away to something a little safe and then try to create opportunities from that. So that's my team. I am pretty excited how that build came out in the end. I didn't really know how I was going to go into this matchup. The Alomomola Gliscor defensive core is really hard to address with this rain mode, safely at least. And so I expect to see really good solutions on those Pokemon to deal with my rain. So I needed something of a backbone myself to at least make sure I could reset during the match as needed. So we'll go ahead and switch over to the match itself. No major surprises when we're talking team preview here. The one big thing I will note is that he does not bring the Koko. A little bit of a surprise, but not really. Koko didn't really pop as an offensive piece for him in this matchup. In fact, it threatened to enable my Regieleki further, and so I can see it really being a liability. You can tell once again that my opponent has leaned into a more defensive backbone here to try to address me. The Sinistcha, the Alomomola, the Gliscor, to a degree, maybe the Melmetal are all leaning as defensive options to withstand some of my offensive pressure here. And so that puts me in a pretty good spot, I feel, to hopefully enact some of my win conditions early in this matchup. So looking into the leadoffs here, my concern is that he goes a Gliscor, expecting a Palafin lead because he can sit in front of an unboosted Palafin pretty well and get opportunities there. Or he can send out Terrakion on turn 1 to try to pressure, or he might even go Alomomola, expecting a Palafin lead and then trying to do a slow pivot while the Palafin's also pivoting out so that he can just control turn 1 to his advantage, or turn 2 to his advantage, because I forced out a predictable turn 1 play. So I'm not going to lead Palafin here. I don't feel that's a really good lead off. I feel that doesn't put me in a good spot. So if I'm expecting a Gliscor lead or an Alomomola lead or maybe even to a degree a Terrakion lead, I feel pretty good about the threat of my Pelipper here, just because Pelipper doesn't usually run Scarf, and so you can try to get away with some unexpected plays early on when they're not expecting to be outsped by the Pelipper. And so if I get a Gliscor lead or a Terrakion lead, I can threaten those with a Surf on turn 1 when they expect to be able to safe U-turn out and control with an Alomomola or something. I can try to take advantage of that. So I'm liking the look of Pelipper here. At least at the time of the match, I was liking the lead off of Pelipper here. And so I'll go ahead and play. I'm on fast mode. Let me take that to slow. So I lead Pelipper just for the hope of getting the Gliscor or the Terrakion counter lead. I'm very wrong. Or the Sinistcha lead. If he thought that I might lead Palafin, Sinistcha is a really strong lead because he can get a free Calm Mind in on turn 1 because I obviously have to run away. In all 3 situations, Pelipper felt really good. Unfortunately, one of the situations that's not good for Pelipper is the Latios, because now Latios is on the field. I certainly cannot one-hit KO this. I don't want to reveal yet that I am Choice Scarf Pelipper. That takes away from later gameplay if I'm showing that I'm choice locked. And so I'm forced into a hard switch on turn 1. The really bad thing here is that I have not Mega Evolved, and this is something I'm looking at, obviously, in hindsight of the match, is that I did not Mega Evolve my Meganium yet, which makes Draco Meteor clean and safe, and there's no switch into Draco Meteor. And so I've put myself in a really bad predicament on turn 1. I don't usually lead Mega Meganium, and I may have to reconsider that after this matchup. And so I leave myself very vulnerable to that Dragon spam on turn 1 until I've done so with the Mega Meganium. So I'm giving him a really free window here to do what he wants with this Latios on turn 1. I'm certainly not going to threaten this in any real way, so I have to run away. My only hope here is that I'm dealing with a choice-locked Latios that at least on turn 2, like in previous week where I played a Noivern and I ate the Draco turn 1, I could then on turn 2 get the Synthesis off. And so I get the special attack drop, which is good. I don't see a Life Orb damage, so I'm still hoping maybe that I'm okay. And this gets into something one of my habits as a player is I'm not very calc heavy during a match. I've played a lot of Pokemon over the years, and so I can oftentimes lean on the eyeball test for damage output and say whether that should be, specs damage or just, modest nature or modest with a life orb or modest with an expert bell, things like that. I can get in the habit of just trying to eyeball damage output and presume items. And so I see this damage output here, and my mind is thinking, oh, well, there's a chance this is maybe specs here, and I just live the hit because I'm bulky enough. And so it's going to be sucking Draco again. I can get my synthesis off, be pretty healthy still for the rest of the game. This isn't an awful, disastrous start to the match. Unfortunately, the eyeball test fails me here, and I'm actually going to lose the Mega Meganium on turn 2, which is really, really bad. Enables his Latios to be a Draco Meteor spammer the rest of the game. I don't use Latios and Latias a lot in draft, so I'm always neglecting the existence of Soldew as an item, and so I'm pretty sure that's what he has at this point based off that damage output, based off the fact that he's not choice locked, based off the fact that he hasn't had any life orb damage. This is probably a Soldew Latios, and I have lost my only answer to Dragon Spam, so really, really tough spot to be where I'm down him on turn 2, and I've not put any damage to him so far. So I'm going to try to take advantage of what I see as a forced switch out here for the Latios to at least get my Palafin form change completed. And so I'm going to send in Palafin here because I expect him to hard switch out, even though he can stand in front of the Palafin, he doesn't want to have his Latios be too weak. I figure he might go Alomomola here or something just to try to have a slow pivoter and reset the battlefield. But once again, he's actually going to stay in here, and so I'm going to eat another Draco. Really, really rough start to this game for me. I've been really incorrect on a couple of calls in front of this Latios, and I'm paying a hefty price for it. At least at that point, he thankfully does need to run away, and I'm going to predict that he's going to run away at that stage. A bit of a gamble by me, but I'm in a really rough spot early here, and so I need to be a little more aggressive on my calls. I don't expect him to stay in and click Draco again. That would, of course, be catastrophic to me if he does, but I see that as a safer sub opportunity, and so I'm going to take it, and I'm thankfully right this time. So I'm +1 defense behind a sub in front of a Gliscor. I feel pretty good about that. I'm electroshotting because, again, I'm confident I'm not going to do enough damage output without it, and so I'll eat this Earthquake because I have to here. It breaks the sub, which is not great for me, but I don't think it's going to do 38% at the same time, so I feel pretty good about the Flash Cannon click here. He's going to Earthquake again. Thankfully, I was right. It does not KO. And so I'm at a spot where I kill Gliscor, and I'm faster than Gliscor, so I know it's likely to switch out. And I'm going to click Dark Pulse, expecting either a Lomomola or a Melmetal switch in. So I talked about this a lot early on. I've seen the damage output. I know for a fact this is AV Alomomola. So AV Alomomola can only do one thing here. It can't flip turn because I would have it eat too much chunk damage it doesn't want to eat, and it's just going to boost my special defense or my defense even more. I mean, it could flip turn. I just think it's a dangerous thing to do. It's going to let his Alomomola get chipped down a lot, which he doesn't want to have happen right now. He can flip turn, or he can click Mirror Coat, and so my expectation is that he's going to click Mirror Coat here, and so I'm going to Electroshot so that the Mirror Coat is unsuccessful if it's true, and he does click Mirror Coat, so it's unsuccessful. He absolutely cannot stay in on +2 Electroshot. He does have to run away, and his only safe switch in is the Gliscor. So he's going to go Gliscor, which is good for me. I feel pretty good about that. I know the Gliscor is not going to stay in again because Flash Cannon will kill. He's just trying to get some health back. So I'm going to sub here, expecting either Melmetal or Lomomola, and I'm right. And so I have the Dark Pulse. I'm going to click the Dark Pulse here. The damage output is good, shows me that it's probably not AV. And so I get a really, really helpful flinch. Dark Pulse is only like a 20%, so really favorable there. Hoping I get the roll. I do not, which is obviously really, really unfortunate. And even though I'm +2, Earthquake still does enough to break the sub, which is unfortunate. So I'm going to get a free kill here, thankfully, on the Melmetal, take that out of play, which is good for my later game. So I'm happy with where that is, obviously, but it's going to enable him to come in pretty safely with Terrakion or Latios. He does. I have my safe switch out in the Cladle. He has to click Close Combat right now because he has to deal with what's in front of him. So I get to come in with the Cladle. And looking at this turn, this next opportunity coming here, I have a couple of options. I can attack what's in front of me, or I can teleport out. The thought process for me is that he's very likely to send a Alomomola in front of this Cladle, just because there's no way Cladle can do any real damage to the Alomomola, and he can get some flip turns going to get the Alomomola fully healthy or keep it fully healthy and just kind of dictate game flow that way, because Cladle's not really enabled to stay in front of Alomomola. Or he could attack me again. Like I said, there's potentially his Mega Horn here. So I assume he's going to hard switch out. I am wrong. I miss out on an opportunity to chunk out this Terrakion really well, which is unfortunate. I do get the Palafin switch in here, which he has to obviously respect. And so that's a free sub opportunity for me, thankfully. I finally found that window. I need to do damage, at least to scout this out right away, maybe address berries. I know this isn't a good setup opportunity right now, but I can at least chunk it. So at least I take out the Colbur Berry early, which is good. He hits the Matcha Gotcha. He's going to break the sub. Doesn't really leave me a lot of switch-ins. I know he's going to probably aggressively address the Palafin again, so I'm going to take that as a hard switch-in opportunity for the Archaludon. I expect to survive a Matcha Gotcha, which I do. And so that creates a pretty safe Flash Cannon opportunity right here. He has to respect that it has to switch out. So he's going to go the Gliscor, who's going to get chunked, thankfully, more by this. Go Dark Pulse here. Flash Cannon's not likely to KO here. In fact, I'm pretty sure it can't, but it can leave Gliscor at a really bad spot, because if I can keep it low enough down, then that's going to enable still my Regieleki late game. And so I'm trying to leave that open for Regieleki late game to still to take off. So I'm going to come back in with the Palafin here, because again, he has to keep this alive because of the danger of Regieleki, so I know it's a forced switch out. I'm going to sub again because it's free to do so, and then I got to keep Throat Chopping. If I'm really lucky, get a miss from the Matcha Gotcha. Throat Chop does 60%, which is great damage output. He does Matcha Gotcha again. Safe click, gets good enough health back. I know he's not going to switch out here. He has nowhere to switch out to. He can't switch out to the Latios. He wants that for late game speed. He can't switch out to a Lolamola because that's just another free sub. Can't switch out to Terrakion or Gliscor because he can't afford to sack the Gliscor. Can't afford to let the Terrakion get chipped. So he really has to sack here. So I'm going to take that as a free KO opportunity to get the sack. If there was a chance that a Matcha Gotcha recovery would have put him below the range and still left me opportunity to get the KO, I might have tried to fish for a miss on another sub, but he would have gotten, I think it was at 14% back. That would have put him at 61%. So that would have been a potential that my next Throat Chop would not have KO'd. So I couldn't afford that. So I had to take the safe KO there. I would have liked to have fished for a miss, but there just wasn't a safe window to do so. He's going to come in with the Latios because that's mega free here and take advantage of that. I'm going to eat the Luster Purge here. I have to sack the Cladle just because there's no other thing to sack. I'm in a tough spot here. I don't know that anything can survive the Draco, so I'm trying to force the Draco out so at least I can get a safe entry with Palafin and try to win that way. That's really my best win con right now. And so I'm trying to see if I can enable that, but the difficulty is in creating that situation. So my hope is to send out the Pelipper, force the Draco, and get the free switch out. And so I'm going to U-turn, hoping I either get the Draco coming out or I get a hard switch going into like the Alomomola or the Gliscor or something. I do not. I U-turn. I reveal at this point that I'm Scarf, and then the Luster Purge on my negative special defense nature is going to obviously obliterate the Regieleki. So unfortunate there. My win cons are getting low here. I'm going to start Hurricane spamming because that's really all I have left to do. We talked in postgame about this, and I want to give him some credit here. He knew I was not going to click U-turn again into this Alomomola, or I'm sorry, into that Latios. He knew I couldn't risk the Palafin and being wrong again. So he was really, really confident my Pelipper was going to attack right there, because the outcome of being wrong on that turn would have been absolutely game over for me. So he made a really aggressive, really correct call to go to the Alomomola there, because he just felt there was no way I would risk it, and he was absolutely right. So huge credit to Spike on that call. It certainly puts me in a further bind. So I'm going to Hurricane here because that's all I can really do at this stage, and just try to fish for some flinches or confusions. He flip turns, I think, maybe expecting a hard switch to Palafin, which I did not do. I'm kind of just resigned to sack the Pelipper here and just see if I can get a lucky miss with the Draco on the Palafin. So Hurricane again. I'm going to keep spamming Hurricane until he addresses Pelipper. That's kind of the stage I'm at right now. Hurricane again. And then I'm going to be out of rain now. I got the lucky confusion proc. I'm going to miss the hurricane, unfortunately, which is going to enable this Alomomola to knock off my choice scarf, which really disables any sort of utility Pelipper has left in this game. Pelipper will actually get a KO, though, so good on Pelipper. He's going to come in with Latios here. I'm hoping I can force the Draco. I don't think I'm likely to. I get a Luster Purge. That's enough to get the KO here. So that really leaves me with just the Palafin. The one thing in my favor right now is I'm pretty heavily invested on the HP side, so there is some tankability to the Palafin, which is fortunate. And there's always the potential for a Draco miss. He hasn't missed anything this game, so maybe I'm going to get lucky. I do not get lucky. The Draco does hit, but I do live, which is really, really fortunate. Which at least takes care of the Latios. And then he's going to come in with the Terrakion, which is obviously his only safe switch in right now, and hopes to survive the Jet Punch, which he does. And that's what I talk about when I said I was wrong earlier to not address the Pokemon right in front of me when I had Claydol out there. If Claydol had even just Ice Beamed this Terrakion in front of it rather than teleporting, that would have been the necessary chip I needed for this late game to go the way I needed it to go. Because I would have done at least 10%. And so then Palafin takes care of that with the Jet Punch. The Gliscor's only got 29% on it, and I have Jet Punch priority, so I'll beat the Gliscor. So there was a win con situation there I threw away when I decided to teleport in front of the Terrakion, which is unfortunate. And so he's able to come away here with the 2-0 win. He executed really, really well on the predicts, and especially on the leadoff. I've talked a lot about my team and getting the leadoffs right. I've not been right as often as I would like to be on some of those leadoffs, and this was a week I really, really suffered for it. I need to be more cautious going forward on looking at Mega Meganium leadoffs when the opposing dragon is really, really threatening, especially on turn 1. Otherwise, I enable those really free Dracos, those really free outrages for some of the physical dragon types. And so I got punished really, really hard for that this week, and that put me on the back foot from turn 2. And I never really fully recovered from that. I was trying to play a sack game late, but I was already down Mons, and so I couldn't really trade off the way I needed to trade off. And so he took advantage of that early Mon lead and held on to it, and I was just not able to break it. Certainly a couple things could have gone my way. You know, I could have gotten a higher roll on the Melmetal to KO that and stay behind a sub. I could have gotten a well-timed miss from a Machagacha or a Draco, which didn't happen, but if I'm relying on some RNG to go in my favor, and I do have a history of favorable RNG, I'm not going to lie, but if I'm relying on RNG to go my way and it doesn't, I can't be upset with the results. And in this case, I was just thoroughly outplayed by Spike on the predicts game, and he came in with a really good strategy, came in with some really aggressive firepower on a couple of his Mons and some really good defensive utility for the rest, and he took advantage of my mistakes and his predicts, and he was able to execute a winning strategy. So full kudos to him. I'm disappointed with the results, but I cannot say I disagree with them. So I dropped to 3-1, positive 10 differential. Still a really good start to the season. Sometimes it's nice to get that first loss out of the way. It kind of takes the edge off the rest of the season when you're not trying to play for a perfect record. You're just trying to play for a playoff spot. And so I am hoping that it will enable me to play a little more calmly going forward. I'm not chasing perfection. So 3-1 plus 10. I did not bring my Nihilego this week, and so maybe there's something to be said about that. My Nihilego has been my kill leader. It's got like 8 or 9 KOs on the season so far, so it's doing really well for itself. Didn't show up here. It didn't make sense to show up here, so I wasn't regretting the choice to bring it. It was a bad fit for this matchup, but it certainly says something about my win conditions when I've been really reliant on this one Pokemon to clean up, and it wasn't there to do that this week, and I couldn't find a new way to the end game. And so I'll need to keep that in mind in week 5 and how I want to try to approach my win conditions. Outside of just, bring Nihilego, I need to look at other ways to more consistently close out games so that I'm not putting myself in these tough corners late where I don't have a good exit strategy and I get punished for it. So that is it for this week. I'm hoping to get my week 5 opponent on the mic. I certainly would like to do more of those this season. It's just been really, really hard to time. Spike and me had an agreement to do one at one point, but some IRL stuff came up for him, unfortunately, and he had to bow out of that, which I totally understand. But for week 5, I will try to get someone on the mic again, or at least a couple more games this season, because I do like those conversations a lot. I think they're really, really insightful. So I'm looking forward to trying that again. But for now, that is it for me. I will catch you all in the next one.